The massive trading station Omega drifted through the void like a metallic city, its docking bays filled with ships from 100 different worlds. In the depths of the station, the Red Nova Cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders, smugglers, and fortune-seekers. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the sound of alien languages mixing together. Captain Jaxon Reeves sat at the center of a crowded table, his massive frame dominating the space around him. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, the Vorthan warrior was an impressive sight, with his bronze-colored skin marked by ritual scars, and his 4 muscular arms decorated with trophies from various conquests. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their strength and their love of combat, and Jaxon had built a reputation as one of the most successful mercenaries in this sector of space. Tonight, he was in his element, regaling a crowd of admirers with tales of his adventures across dangerous worlds. His deep voice carried easily over the Cantina's background noise as he described his latest contract on the ice planet, Frostbite, where he had single-handedly eliminated a pack of crystalline wolves that had been terrorizing mining colonies. The creatures were twice the size of a normal predator, Jaxon boasted, flexing one of his secondary arms for emphasis. Their claws could slice through reinforced steel, and their hide was harder than diamond. But they had never faced a Vorthan warrior before. The mixed crowd of aliens listening to his story made impressed sounds. Some were young traders looking for excitement. Others were seasoned spacers who appreciated a good tale. They hung on every word as Jaxon described his victory in elaborate detail. I tracked the alpha male through a blizzard that would have killed most species, he continued, taking a long drink from his oversized mug. When I finally cornered the beast in its den, it stood on its hind legs and roared a challenge that shattered ice formations for kilometers around. But fear is not in a Vorthan's vocabulary. Near the bar, a lone figure sat quietly nursing a simple glass of water. Zara Nightfall was unremarkable by most standards, standing barely 5.5 feet tall with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the simple gray uniform of an independent trader, the kind of person who moved small cargo shipments between worlds and usually went unnoticed in places like this. Her brown eyes were alert and intelligent, but she kept them focused on her drink rather than joining the crowd around Jaxon's table. The final battle lasted 3 hours, Jaxon declared, his voice growing louder as he reached the climax of his story. The beast's claws left marks in my armor that I wear with pride to this day. But when the snow settled, I was standing over its corpse, and the mining colonies were safe once again. The crowd erupted in cheers and raised their glasses in tribute to the mighty warrior. Several patrons bought him drinks, and someone started a chant of his name. Jaxon basked in the attention, his chest swelling with pride. But that was nothing compared to my expedition to the burning sands of Infernus, he said, launching into another tale. The fire scorpions there can melt steel with their venom, and the heat would cook most beings alive within minutes. Yet I spent 2 weeks hunting their queen through caverns filled with molten lava. As the night wore on, Jaxon's stories grew more elaborate and his audience more intoxicated. He told of battles with void krakens in deep space, of surviving the toxic swamps of Plague World, and of defeating an entire pirate fleet single-handedly. With each tale, his reputation seemed to grow larger in the eyes of his listeners. Of course, Jaxon said with a dismissive wave of one of his hands, none of these worlds compare to the so-called Deathworlds that some species make such a fuss about. Take Earth, for example. I've heard traders speak of it in whispered tones, as if it were some kind of nightmare realm. Zara's head came up slightly at the mention of her homeworld, but she remained silent. Earth, Jaxon laughed, a sound like grinding stone. A backwater planet inhabited by soft, pink creatures who barely stand upright. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no real strength to speak of. Yet some fools in the galaxy act as if these humans are dangerous. A few of the aliens at his table looked uncertain. Earth's reputation as a death world was well known, even if the details were often unclear. I've seen images of these humans, Jaxon continued, his voice dripping with contempt. Weak little bipeds with thin skin and tiny teeth. They need artificial tools for everything, because their bodies are so poorly designed. They can't even survive in their own environment without layers of artificial covering. He stood up to his full height, towering over everyone in the Cantina. Any one of my people could land on Earth and conquer entire continents without breaking a sweat. These humans would scatter like frightened insects the moment they saw a real warrior. Several patrons nodded agreement, caught up in Jaxon's confidence. Others looked less certain, having heard different stories about Earth and its inhabitants. The galaxy's reputation system must be broken, Jaxon declared with another booming laugh. To classify a world full of such pathetic creatures as dangerous is the greatest joke I've ever heard. I've fought actual monsters on dozens of worlds, faced creatures that would give nightmares to seasoned warriors. But humans? They're barely worth the fuel it would cost to visit their insignificant planet. At the bar, Zara slowly turned on her stool to face the boastful Vorthan. Her movement was quiet and controlled, but something about it caught the attention of several nearby patrons. The background noise of the Cantina seemed to dim slightly as more people noticed the small human woman rising from her seat. "That's quite a speech," Zara said, her voice calm and clear despite its modest volume. "I especially liked the part where you demonstrated your complete ignorance of the subject you were discussing." The Cantina fell silent. Every conversation stopped as all eyes turned toward the confrontation developing between the massive alien warrior and the small human trader. Jaxon's forearms tensed as he focused his attention on this unexpected challenger. And what would a soft little human know about real danger? Jaxon sneered, his voice filled with amusement rather than anger. "Have you ever faced a true predator in combat? Have you ever hunted something that could actually fight back?" Zara stepped away from the bar, her movements fluid and confident, despite the obvious size difference. "I was born on Earth," she said simply. "I've been facing true predators my entire life." Jaxon's laughter filled the Cantina, joined by nervous chuckles from some of his audience. "Earth predators," he scoffed. "What terrible monsters does your peaceful little world harbor? Furry creatures with sharp teeth? Birds that fly at people? Plants that might cause a rash?" The crowd's laughter grew louder, though several patrons noticed that none of the other humans in the Cantina were joining in the merriment. In fact, they seemed to be quietly moving to positions near the exits. "You really have no idea what you're talking about," Zara observed, her tone remaining conversational despite the growing tension in the room. "But please, continue. Your ignorance is quite educational." Part 1 continues the setup, establishing Jaxon's arrogance and Zara's quiet confidence while building toward the revelation that will come in the following parts. The story maintains the HFY theme while creating entirely new characters and scenarios. Jaxon's laughter echoed through the Red Nova Cantina as he looked down at the small human woman who dared to challenge him. His bronze skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and his ritual scars seemed to pulse with his amusement. The crowd around his table had grown larger, drawn by the spectacle of the mighty Vorthan warrior facing off against what appeared to be a harmless traitor. "Educational?" Jaxon repeated, his voice booming across the now silent Cantina. "Little human, the only thing you could teach me is how your species manages to survive despite being so obviously weak. Do you even have claws, fangs? Any natural weapons at all?" Zara stepped closer, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Despite the obvious danger she was in, her posture remained relaxed and confident. Several alien patrons unconsciously stepped back, sensing something they couldn't quite identify in the human's demeanor. "You want to know about natural weapons?" Zara asked, her brown eyes meeting Jackson's alien gaze without flinching. "Let me tell you about the apex predator of Earth. It stands about my height, weighs roughly what I weigh, and has no claws, no fangs, no armor, and no venom." Jackson's secondary arms gestured dismissively. "Sounds pathetic. What could such a creature possibly hunt?" "Everything else on the planet," Zara replied simply. The Vorthan warrior's laughter became more forced. "Impossible. Without proper natural weapons, no creature can dominate a world's ecosystem. Basic evolutionary science proves this. You're thinking like prey," Zara observed, pulling a small device from her pocket. "May I show you something?" Without waiting for permission, she activated the device, and a three-dimensional holographic display appeared floating above her palm. The image showed what looked like a planetary classification chart, with Earth highlighted in an ominous red color. "Galactic Survey Classification System," Zara announced to the entire Cantina. "Earth's official designation. Class Omega Deathworld. Survival probability for unprepared visitors. Less than 3%. Jaxon snorted. "Survey classifications can be wrong. Some bureaucrat probably made an error. Interesting theory," Zara said, manipulating the display to show detailed statistics. "Let's look at some data. In the past 5 years, exactly 47 hunting expeditions have attempted to visit Earth for trophy collection. Would you like to guess how many returned?" The Cantina had become so quiet that the humming of the station's life support systems seemed loud in comparison. Every patron was focused on the confrontation, sensing that something significant was being revealed. "All of them." "Obviously," Jaxon replied, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "Your kind lacks the ability to threaten real hunters." "0, Zara said flatly. 0 expeditions returned. 0 survivors. 0 distress calls. They simply vanished." She adjusted the holographic display again, showing a star chart with several systems marked in red. "The Kroner Hunting Guild has declared Earth off-limits to all members after losing 3 full teams. The Cerulean Military Academy uses Earth as an example of worlds too dangerous for training exercises. The Merchant Union requires triple hazard pay for any cargo runs to the Sol system." Jackson's confidence was beginning to waver, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Propaganda," he declared. "Your government probably spreads these stories to keep visitors away. You think Earth's government has that kind of influence?" Zara asked with what might have been amusement. "We barely have a unified planetary government. Most of our political entities can't agree on what to have for lunch, much less coordinate a galaxy-wide disinformation campaign." She manipulated the display once more, showing what appeared to be military intelligence reports. "These assessments come from independent sources. The Zentarian Empire's Strategic Intelligence Division, the Free Traders Alliance Risk Assessment Bureau. Even the Hive Mind Collective has classified Earth as a significant threat to drone survival." The crowd around Jackson's table had begun to murmur among themselves. Several patrons were discreetly checking their personal data devices, apparently looking up information about Earth on their own. "But you want to know the really interesting part?" Zara continued, her voice taking on an almost conversational tone. "Earth isn't dangerous because of environmental hazards. It's not the weather, or the geology, or even the wildlife that makes it a death world." "Then what?" Jaxon demanded, his forearms now clenched into fists. "The humans," Zara replied simply. "We're the apex predator I was telling you about. The one with no claws, no fangs, no natural armor." Jackson's laugh was harsh and disbelieving. "Impossible. You're barely half my size. Your species has no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no superior strength. How could you possibly be dangerous to real predators?" Zara's expression became serious. "Because we don't hunt like other predators. We don't rely on strength or speed or natural weapons. We hunt with our minds, She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a series of tactical diagrams. Humans are persistence hunters. We don't catch our prey quickly. We follow it. For days, weeks, months if necessary. We track it across continents, through seasons, across years. We study its habits, learn its weaknesses, and then we strike when it's exhausted and has nowhere left to run. The Cantina had become completely silent except for Zara's voice. Even the background music had somehow stopped. But more than that, she continued, humans are pack hunters with advanced communication. Attack one human, and you've made enemies of potentially billions. We share information instantaneously across our entire planet. Every tactical mistake an enemy makes, it's recorded, analyzed, and distributed to every military unit on Earth within minutes. Jaxon was beginning to look uncomfortable, though he tried to hide it behind bluster. Stories, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Tall tales to make your pathetic species sound dangerous. Would you like proof? Zara asked quietly. Before Jaxon could respond, she touched another control on her device. The holographic display changed to show what appeared to be security footage from various locations throughout the galaxy. The images were grainy and partially corrupted, but they clearly showed scenes of devastation on different worlds. Keth 7 Hunting Preserve, Zara narrated as the first clip played. A team of Vorthan warriors actually decided to establish a trophy hunting operation on Earth. They landed in what humans call the Amazon rainforest. The footage showed several massive figures in advanced armor moving through dense jungle vegetation. The image quality was poor, but the distinctive four-armed silhouettes were clearly Vorthan. They were equipped with the best technology their species could provide, Zara continued. Advanced camouflage, energy weapons, environmental suits rated for extreme conditions. They should have been perfectly prepared for anything a primitive world could throw at them. The footage continued for several more seconds, showing the hunting parties setting up some kind of base camp. Then the image suddenly cut out. That was the last transmission received from the expedition, Zara said matter-of-factly. Earth Search and Rescue found their equipment scattered across 50 square kilometers of jungle. No bodies were ever recovered. Jaxon's bronze skin had taken on a slightly greenish tinge. Equipment failures happen. Accidents occur in dangerous terrain. The equipment wasn't damaged by environmental factors, Zara replied. It had been systematically dismantled. Every piece of advanced technology was carefully removed and studied. The energy weapons were found with their power cells completely drained. The armor showed signs of being analyzed and reverse-engineered. She showed another clip, this one apparently from a space-based observation platform. The Draken Empire sent a battalion of their elite shock troops to what they thought was an undefended human agricultural colony. They expected to capture slaves and resources with minimal resistance. The footage showed a formation of heavily armed spacecraft approaching what appeared to be a peaceful farming settlement on Earth. The ships were sleek and obviously designed for military operations. Colony had a population of about 3,000 humans, Zara continued. Mostly farmers, crafters, and their families. No military installations, no obvious defensive systems, no standing army. The recording showed the alien ships landing and troops deploying in perfect military formation. Everything seemed to be going according to their plan. The Draken troops established a perimeter and began advancing toward the settlement, Zara narrated. Their commanders reported that the operation was proceeding smoothly and that human resistance was non-existent. Then the footage became chaotic. The orderly military formation suddenly collapsed into confusion. Ships exploded without warning. Troops scattered in apparent panic. Within minutes, what had been a textbook invasion had become a complete disaster. Total elapsed time from landing to complete defeat. 17 minutes, Zara said quietly. Draken casualties, 100%. Human casualties. 0. The cantina was so silent that individual breathing could be heard. Jaxon stared at the holographic display with growing horror as the implications became clear. The farmers had sent a distress signal the moment the Dreekan ships were detected entering the system, Zara explained. By the time the invaders landed, every human within 1,000 kilometers knew about the threat. They had 17 minutes to prepare, and they used every second of it. She manipulated the display to show a tactical analysis of the battle. Improvised explosives made from agricultural chemicals. Coordinated sniper fire from concealed positions. Electronic warfare using modified farming equipment. The humans turned their entire environment into a weapon. Jaxon's 4 arms were trembling now, though whether from fear or rage was unclear. "This proves nothing," he said, but his voice was barely above a whisper. "A few lucky victories don't make your species truly dangerous." "You're right," Zara agreed. "Let me show you what makes us truly dangerous." The holographic display changed once more, this time showing what appeared to be an official document from some kind of galactic military authority. Earth, Defense Protocol 7. Zara read aloud. Classification level. Absolute. In the event of any hostile action taken against human colonies or Earth itself, all galactic civilizations are advised to immediately cease all contact with human space and prepare for extended conflict. She looked directly at Jaxon as she continued reading. Human military doctrine does not recognize concepts such as proportional response or acceptable casualties. Any threat to human territory will be met with total elimination of the threat's source, regardless of political consequences or resource expenditure. Document continued with increasingly ominous details about humanity's approach to warfare, but Zara had made her point. Around the cantina, alien patrons were beginning to edge toward the exits, suddenly very aware that they were in the presence of one of these supposedly dangerous humans. "Still think Earth would be an easy conquest?" Zara asked quietly. The silence in the Red Nova Cantina stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Jaxon's 4 massive arms hung at his sides as he stared at the holographic evidence floating before him. His bronze skin had lost its lustrous sheen, now appearing dull and sickly under the artificial lights. Around him, the crowd that had been cheering his boasts just minutes earlier was quietly dispersing, suddenly finding reasons to be elsewhere. But Zara was not finished. "There's something else you should know about Earth," she said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to press down on everyone in the cantina. "Something that makes all those military reports and statistics seem like gentle warnings." She manipulated her device once more, and the holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be an ancient star chart. The image was unlike the clean, digital maps they had seen before. This one looked hand-drawn, with symbols and markings that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "This is from the archival vaults of the first ones," Zara explained, her tone becoming almost reverent. "The species that explored the galaxy millions of years before any of our civilizations existed. They left very few records, but the ones they did leave carry warnings that every advanced species has learned to respect." Jaxon found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "What kind of warnings?" "Warnings about worlds where the old powers still sleep," Zara replied. "Planets where ancient forces lie dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Earth is marked on every first one chart with the symbol of the Great Sleeper." The holographic display zoomed in on Earth's location, where a complex symbol seemed to writhe and shift like a living thing. Several alien patrons who recognized first one markings made involuntary sounds of fear and began backing toward the exits more urgently. "You see," Zara continued, "humans aren't the only apex predator on Earth. We're just the most visible one. We're the Guardians, the Watchers, the ones who keep vigil over something far more dangerous than any military force." She touched another control. and the display changed to show what appeared to be geological survey data from Earth. Mountains, oceans, and continents were mapped in precise detail, but there were anomalies in the data that didn't match any known planetary formation patterns. Deep beneath the Himalayas, there are cavern systems that predate human civilization by millions of years, Zara said. Chambers carved from living rock, filled with an atmosphere that doesn't match Earth's current composition. And in the deepest chamber, something waits. Jaxon's breathing had become labored, his warrior's instincts finally recognizing a threat beyond his ability to comprehend or fight. What waits? The last dragon, Zara said simply. The words hit the Cantina like a physical blow. Even species that had never heard of dragons seemed to understand the significance of what she was saying. There was something primal and universal about the concept that transcended cultural boundaries. Dragons are myths. Jaxon protested, but his voice carried no conviction. Stories to frighten children. Every species in the galaxy has dragon stories, Zara observed. Every civilization, no matter how different, has legends of great serpents or flying lizards or fire-breathing monsters. Don't you find that curious? How could completely separate evolutionary paths all independently develop the same mythological concept? She didn't wait for an answer. They're not myths. They're memories. Genetic memories of a time when dragons ruled the galaxy before they retreated to hidden worlds to sleep through the ages. The holographic display now showed astronomical data spanning millions of years. Star charts tracked the movement of various species throughout the galaxy, and there were clear gaps in the historical record where entire civilizations seemed to have vanished without explanation. The great extinction events that shaped galactic history, Zara continued. The mysterious disappearances of advanced civilizations. The dead worlds that show signs of having been burned from space. Dragons didn't retreat because they were defeated. They retreated because they chose to sleep, leaving guardians to watch over them. Jaxon was now visibly shaking, his massive frame reduced to trembling vulnerability. This is impossible. If such creatures existed, they would be known. They would be studied, catalogued, controlled. Controlled? Zara's voice carried a hint of amusement that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. You still don't understand. Nothing controls a dragon. Nothing commands them, negotiates with them, or defeats them in open combat. They are forces of nature given consciousness and will. She manipulated the display once more, showing real-time seismic data from Earth. Deep beneath the planet's surface, something massive was stirring. The readings showed movement patterns that defied conventional geology. Earth's dragon has been sleeping for 12,000 years, Zara said, dreaming of skies filled with flame and worlds bowing before its power. But dragons are not deaf in their sleep. They hear threats to their territory. They sense challenges to their domain. The seismic readings were becoming more active, showing increasing movement in the deep chambers beneath the Himalayas. Several monitoring stations were beginning to register temperature anomalies that suggested massive amounts of heat building up far below the surface. Hunting expedition that came to Earth. Every invasion attempt, every act of aggression toward humans has been noted, Zara explained. Recorded not just by our governments and military forces, but by something far older and far more powerful. Jaxon's legs finally gave out, and he collapsed back into his chair. His forearms clutched at the table, as if it were the only solid thing left in his universe. What have I done? You boasted about conquering Earth, Zara replied matter-of-factly. You declared your intention to hunt humans like animals. You made yourself known as a threat to the dragon's territory and the Yele, dragon's chosen guardians. The seismic data on the display was now showing massive upheavals in the Earth's deep places. Whatever was stirring down, it was enormous beyond imagination, and it was becoming more active by the minute. Dragons don't distinguish between actual threats and potential threats. Zara continued. They don't care about intent versus capability. They hear a challenge to their domain, and they respond accordingly. Around the cantina, the few remaining patrons were now fleeing openly. Even the bartender had abandoned his post and was heading for the emergency exits. Only Zara and Jaxon remained, facing each other across a table littered with abandoned drinks. "Please," Jaxon whispered, his voice breaking. "I was only boasting. I never intended to actually visit Earth. I have no real desire to hunt humans or challenge your world." "I know," Zara said gently. "Unfortunately, intentions matter very little to a dragon that has been awakened from 12,000 years of slumber." The holographic display now showed space-based sensors detecting massive energy readings coming from Earth. Satellites were registering atmospheric disturbances that suggested something enormous was moving beneath the planet's crust. "The last dragon of Earth is ancient beyond measure," Zara explained. "It remembers when galaxies were young and entire solar systems burned at its whim. It has slept through the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but now it stirs because something dared to threaten its territory." Jaxon was openly weeping now, his warrior's pride completely shattered. "How do I make this stop? How do I convince it that I'm not a threat?" "You can't," Zara replied simply. "Dragons don't negotiate. They don't accept apologies or